Before loading the hip hinge or doing a deadlift, it's ideal that you have foundational strength through your glutes, through your hamstrings, through your lower back and deep core, so that you don't put your body at risk for injury. So there are a series of exercises that I often give to my patients, my clients, to do while they're deadlifting or while they're building their deadlift. And not just in a single session, but like through that training cycle or even before. And so in the next several videos, I'm gonna go over accessory exercises to target muscles that support your body to enhance or get strong enough to load your deadlift and build to a heavier deadlift, essentially. First, I'm gonna cover the glute bridge. I recommend watching the video first, then going along with the video a second time. You're gonna lay on your back, getting into a neutral spine position, feet hip width apart, heels somewhat close to your butt, play around with it, full foot flat on the ground. From here, your spine needs to be in neutral, not flat, not super arched, just a neutral arch position. Hands could be by your side, could be crossed. What you're gonna do is you're gonna lift your hips up as high as you can until your back starts to arch or your hips can't go any further because of the tissues in the front of your body. You're gonna hold this position for about 5 seconds and then come back down. As you come back down, your spine stays in neutral. Really, the only thing moving is your hips. You're going from a position of hip flexion, where I am now, to hip extension. So those are the basic targets from your movement. Now, you're going to pay attention to what's working. So as you see, I adjusted my feet a little bit. I'm gonna bring my knees out just slightly, and my feet moved my feet a little bit wider, so play around with it. But ideally, they're gonna be somewhat around your deadlifting width, like if you're doing a sumo versus a conventional. So I'm just like about hip width apart. Now so I'm in neutral position. Neutral, not just low back, I didn't mention this, but I don't want your ribs to be super flared. So if you have to, you might need to support yourself with props, or if you have the prerequisite strength or core connection, just bring your ribs down a little bit so they're stacked over your pelvis. Now you're not bracing your core here any more than needed from a get your pelvis in neutral standpoint. And you can get your body in neutral by just without that hard bracing. We don't want hard bracing. So if I've taught you how to connect with a little bit of pelvic floor, a little bit of TA together, that might shift as that becomes more of ingrained or muscle memory, I guess. But you don't want to brace too hard because that could flex your spine, and we don't want that with this type of bridge. So as you start, you're going to squeeze your glutes, lift your hips, stay squeezing at the top for about 5 seconds. You can check in with your spine and make sure it's not super arched by putting your fingers underneath your spine, and then you come back down. Your spine does not go into flexion. It does not go into extension. It stays there as you do this motion. Common errors would be is the pelvis tips back and then they lift. What that looks like is your hips will not get as high, your back will be more flat and more rounded up here versus in neutral. Very different. What is happening is as you squeeze your glutes, your pelvis is tipping. So your glutes are tipping your pelvis versus moving your hips, or you're over bracing your abdominals, which drives the tilt. So that, one more time, glutes squeeze, stay squeezing. You can feel your glutes squeezing, hold for 5 seconds, then control down. I like people to do either this from a time standpoint, doing rounds of a minute versus focusing on like how many reps you're getting, focusing on technique instead of counting, or doing like 2 sets of 10 to 15, 2 to 3 sets, 10 to 15, holding 15 seconds each, and then moving on to the next exercise.